The theme of today's workshop is the state of nutrition. I've been given a subject, and this time I'd like to talk about this nutritional condition. I would like to explain. This is a very fundamental point. I think it's a question that makes me nervous when people ask it. So, if you ask me what nutritional status is at the beginning, I'll tell you. How would you answer? That's today's theme, so if you can answer this correctly, perhaps today's study session isn't necessary. Today, I would like to talk to you about your nutritional condition. The hospital I am currently affiliated with is Acute Care Hospital with a Tertiary Emergency Care Center, so-called Acute Care Hospital, so-called. I was hoping that you could envision a patient who would be admitted there. Perhaps if the age or target audience is different, I think the meaning will be a little different. This nutritional condition that we deal with today is called the fact that the patient is a patient in an acute care hospital for the elderly. I hope you can imagine. That's exactly the amount of skeletal muscle mass. Muscle mass. It is important to note that. Actually, I'm sure you've all studied this before in textbooks and the like. It's a concept called nitrogen death. This is lean body mass, non-fat. Muscle. It is mainly an indicator of muscle, but it is also an indicator of. If we take this as 100%, then as muscle mass slowly declines. That's exactly what you're showing on your slide right now. Each step of the process is finalized. It would mean that it would be an event called death. At this time, if you lose to what percentage of lean body mass? I'm trying to figure out if this is what is called nitrogen death. Do you all know this place? I'm sure most of you who join us here know what I'm talking about. As you all know, we are at 70% here. Frequently asked questions include, how much less? Albumin, for example, is pretty high up on the list. Like, what percentage of albumin is going to decrease? If it decreases at all? This is the part about pressure ulcers and such. What percentage of this wound healing delay should be reduced? I often get questions about delayed wound healing. This is fine and honest. I'm not sure what percentage would be here. I don't mind if it's just a feeling. If it is reduced by this much, the healing process is not as good as it could be. I think you can have each of them. I think it's fine. So how do you measure this 70%? I wonder if everyone is measuring this. Supra-abdominal circumference, as you can see on this slide right now. I use an inserter tape to measure AC and also calipers, though they are still asleep in this figure. Using calipers to measure TSF in such a way that this skeletal muscle mass is measured by. I think it would be a simple and inexpensive method. By the way, in our clinic, this is used to assess skeletal muscle mass. It may be difficult to say everyone, though, or those who were caught in the screening process. Patients intervening in NSTs and so on. You might need it. How about this then? In fact, I've been measuring it myself, or with my NST team, etc. Nutritional management. It's being utilized a lot. How about a place called? This is my very personal opinion. In fact, if we're down to 70% at the nitrogen death earlier. It's called nitrogen death. I'm just saying that I'm pretty close to death. Understood. By decreasing by 30%. Very ecological homeostasis. I'm very much at the end of my rope. I know what you mean about coming close. The measurements are also AC, TSF. I could tell even by measuring. To be honest, that's not why I'm here. At first, I had to study this and that. We're still measuring it at our clinic. Here's my honest opinion when I first started measuring. So here it is. In what way, do you mean? I wonder if we'll make use of that nutritional management. What's the use of it? At what time is this? I'm just saying, I wonder if this measured one will come to life. I was very confused out this myself. I think I'd actually measure AC and TSF. The final indicator is. Which one do you use? The AC and TSF that were there earlier. Circumference of the upper arm. This is the AC, but AC. It's all the arms here. All around the arm and pinch at the second arm. You have a TSF that measures the subcutaneous fat thickness of the triceps. In this case, it would be this arrow. Right here. This subcutaneous fat thickness actual conditions. I don't know about. Some facilities say they will evaluate AC and TSF alone. I'm not sure if it's too much. From this AC and TSF. AMC called brachial muscle circumference. And then there's the AMA of skeletal muscle mass. I'm not sure if I can give you that as an indicator. At your facilities, I wonder how far out they're using it. At the point called, here's the thing, by the way, in our hospital, measure up to AC and TSF. AMC here. I'm giving it a shot so far. I'm putting it out there so far in case you're interested. I'm going to give you or of this thing called percent AMC here. That percent AMC said earlier. I'm not sure if it's below 70% or not. I'm trying to use one as an indicator. I don't know about. In our case, we use indicators like these, where 80% AMC is better than 80% is good in one way or another. In our case, we use indicators like these, where 80% AMC is better than 80% is good in one way or another. In our case, we use indicators like these, 70 to 80%. I'm going to call this one moderate. We use it in our clinic. In line with the nitrogen death mentioned earlier, we call it a severe nutritional disorder if less than 70% of the population is severely malnourished. With the same kind of thinking, I'm a percent IBW. It's something you get out of your weight, but I'm just trying to figure out what the ideal weight ratio is. Same here, more than 80% are good and 70 to 80%, which is called moderate nutritional impairment. Less than 70% is also considered to be severely nutritionally impa. I just had a quick question for you earlier. It's very difficult to know how to use it then, isn't it? What do you think? In fact, now more than 80% good. About 70% to 80% are moderate. I'm judging it by the fact that less than 70% is severe. I don't know. Patients at your facilities, less than 70. Will you actually be in charge of this project? This is also a very sensible place to start. Frankly, less than 70%. Cases of honest experience. I'm assuming you mean a case in a tertiary emergency room. Less than 70%. I have the impression that there are quite a few people who have died. Or even if less than 70% died, one after another, when it looks like I'm about to be discharged from the hospital, I say to myself, this is it. Or getting pneumonia, for example. Or aspiration pneumonia all the time. I'm just saying that I got a UTI in the process or something. I have the impression that there are a lot of troubles. What do you guys think? On the other hand, those who are over 80% are till. I'm doing exactly what you just said. This is just my experience, though. I'm surprised that more than 80% of the people are able to do so. This is the point where you say, I think I'm ready to be discharged from the hospital. It's like you can leave the hospital in a flash. 70% below and in the 60% range. This is already pretty tough. It's not nutritional support. I get the impression that they don't come back very often. Low 60s among those below 70%. I have the impression that most of the people in the first half have passed away. So sensibly very much at this 70%. I have the impression that there is a borderline. By the way, at your place, I know you didn't measure each of them. How many people at the facility you're measuring? Would you like me to measure it for you? How many people a week? In our house, we have about 3 to 5 people a day. I did 5 days and it took me roughly a week. About 20 to 30 people. So, about 100 people in a month. I'm trying to measure about 100 people. Try it and see how it goes. It's still like I said before. I'm a little suspicious from the 70% level. I'm under the impression that you're going to measure that. Earlier, you were measuring. I meant how much skeletal muscle mass do you actually have? So what are the factors that reduce this skeletal muscle mass, too? I think we should look at it a little bit, but if you look at the factors that reduce skeletal muscle mass in roughly 6 categories, I think it's easiest to understand. The first one first. This is invasive. It is a tertiary or rather acute care hospital. Followed by cachexia. You say cachexia or something like that these days. And there are many types of cachexia. In the past, cachexia was somehow associated with cancer. There's all kinds of heart failure and other cachexia now. And starvation. This is a situation where there's just no nutrition in it. First of all, I'm going to talk about these 3 in particular today. These are the RST3 major issues I would like to discuss today. Others, for example, aging. For what it's worth, people in their 90s don't have any more muscle than people in their 50s. I think you have some idea of what I mean. And then there are the bedridden ones. Decreased activity. Those with reduced activity levels. The rest. It leads me to the part about the decrease in activity, but neural or muscular disease. You have ALS or myasthenia gravis or something like that. Muscular disease. From left to right. Invasions, cachexia, starvation. Go to the right. Aging, reduced activity, neurological and muscular diseases. Something is a factor in reducing skeletal muscle mass. I wonder if you all know about this. I was at JSPEN last year and it was amazing. It was distributed. Maybe some of you have seen this before. GLIM standards. New in nutrition assessment. Dr. Higashiguchi was very promotional. This is it. I wonder if you all have seen it. The idea is to consider nutritional management for the elderly. It's called GLIM, the new diagnostic criteria for undernutrition. Explanation in Japanese. We also write about how to use it in this way. That's the part of the explanation I mentioned earlier. The left part shows how much it has actually decreased. Right side to be seen. First, there's the hunger part. Right here, hunger description. I'm in the process of evaluating hunger. Then there are acute illnesses and trauma. That's the invasive part. Invade. Inflammation due to chronic disease. This is the so-called cachexia part. The fact that this is well contained. What makes it different from other assessment tools is that I am very satisfied with these three things, and I am also very pleased with in response. Then, how much is it actually decreasing? The fact that it's in here properly means that it's in here. I've been using this assessment tool for a long time. I wasn't using it. The 6 I mentioned earlier are because of its significant impact on skeletal muscle mass loss. I thought it would be nice to be able to evaluate this properly. Insensible percent AMC. Like, don't come in under 80%. I'm not sure that anyone below 70% has been admitted to the hospital. I found it when this assessment tool was created this time. Very impressed with the operation. I thought this was a great one. It's like this is what we're using now in our house. It's about why it's good. I'm going to look at why it's a good idea. This one, it's being used all over the world now. Assessment tools lined up. In Japan, it's this MNA and others. There may be some places that must use it. This SGA is a facility that uses a lot of it. I know there are a lot of them. Take a look at this. Dietary intake is available in any assessment tool used by. This is the only one I haven't been able to use. Next place inflammations. The place of inflammation. This is how it's done in all the assessment tools. When you handle it this way, weight loss is always a problem. I use any assessment tool. And then there's each one of them. I know some places do nutritional assessment with albumin or something like that. As an actual assessment tool. What's the assessment tool you're using for biochemical testing? Only 2, actually. So what I'm trying to say is skeletal muscle mass. You have already answered the first question of the day. The idea is to look at what affects skeletal muscle mass. I still think it's important. So, I was just wondering how much more than 80% in percentages. 80 to 70% is considered moderate. We've talked about it. I still know it in my head. Trying to get a feel for the body is a good idea. I think it's a little different, so where it is measured, you will still be measured as you have been. I'm You Ali wondering how the 80% progressed. Same disease, but 70% of people are more likely to have it. I'm a little conscious of the fact that something went wrong. I would like you to look at the numbers in the part of your facility where you didn't actually measure it. It is easy to measure. We would be happy to take your measurements. Having had as a percentage lapse. I've seen that these people tended to do this. One case. I think it is important to keep an eye on.